Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. My name is Jay. Today I'm going to talk about what I do when I get a parts car in. I have this Volvo here, which I showed you before. It's in the garage now, so it's the next thing that gets taken apart. Get all the parts off of it to sell. Before you start taking parts off of it, you need to do a couple things to it first. Today I'm going to show you the process that I do when I get a new car in to make sure I know what's good on the car and what's not good. There is no guarantee that every single part on this car is working, especially when you find older, cheap cars. This car was only $500, so there's probably going to be some broken things or some things that I can't sell. You always want to make sure you find that before you sell them. If you're selling a lot of parts that don't work and people are returning them, it will look bad on your eBay name. So you want to make sure you're only selling good parts. The other thing with this car is that I'm not going to strip it down completely. I've made a list right here of everything that's sold on eBay for a good enough amount that I'm going to take off. I'm not going to bother taking off tons and tons of parts to have them sit around for no reason if I haven't seen anything sold in the last 3 to 6 months on eBay. I do not have the room to do that, and there's no point if I'm going to have a part sit around to make $20 in 1 year. I'd rather take off other things that's going to make money and then go get another car. So depending on what you're planning on doing, my Mercedes that I took apart, I stripped that thing down completely, but since that was such a new car with a lot of parts that were expensive on it, it was worth taking it all the way down to the shell. This car is not, so I'm not even going to bother. When you find a parts car, you need to look at what you're going to do. There's no sense on taking the car apart completely to have parts sit around that nobody wants. So just like this car, if there's 50 parts to take off, I'm going to take just those 50 parts off, store them, list them, and sell those. Get rid of the car so I can get the next one in. That way you can keep it going and not just be stagnant with what you're selling. As you can see, the car's in the garage. Yes, I work in a tiny garage. I'm trying to show you guys that you can do this at your house, no matter what kind of space you have. You don't need a warehouse. You don't need tons and tons of storage. All that stuff is going to help, but I have this in one side of my garage. I have enough room on each side to take it apart. But obviously more space would be better, but this is what I have to work with. I'm really trying to show you guys that you can do this at your house with very minimal overhead. And I think this will help some of you guys get started by seeing me be able to do this here. So first things first, you want to make sure that the car that you have runs, drives, stops, you know, the transmission works, the engine works, all of that stuff. As you guys know from the earlier videos, this car was bought with a blown transmission. So right off the bat, I know that this transmission is bad. There's no sense on taking it out. Nobody's gonna buy a bad transmission from an old Volvo. The car does run. It starts right up. The battery and the alternator are junk though, so I have to jump it with another car, but it does start right up and it'll stay running. If you guys are buying parts cars that do not even start or run, it's gonna be really hard to check what works and what doesn't. That might be a pretty big gamble if you buy a parts car that does not even start or run when you have no way to check what works and what doesn't work. So unless you know very well about these cars, if they're from a friend or a family member that you know the history of, I would suggest not buying a car like that. So at least with this car, it doesn't move, but I can start up the engine, I can check all the windows, the locks, the sunroof, the climate control, the radio. I can check every electronic component, and that way I can sell them. If you made a list of what parts sell and the part doesn't work, then you don't even have to take it out of the car. You can just leave it right there. There's no sense on taking out a part that does not work. Once you start taking apart the car, a lot of other things aren't going to work. So if you take apart the fuse box or you take the battery or some of the electrical connections out, then you won't have any power that goes to anything. That's why you want to make sure everything works before you start taking anything apart. The other thing that I've already done with you guys on this car is I've gone around and looked at the outside. So I'm not going to do that again right now. But you want to look at what is on the outside for damage that you can clearly see. These tires are really new, but this one right here keeps going flat after a week or two. So all the tires are good besides this one. If I can find out what is wrong with this tire, then I might still be able to sell all the tires as a package. If not, then maybe I won't be able to. So you want to go around and look. One thing that I did find that I did not notice when I was looking at it when I bought it was that this taillight has a good crack in it. These taillights I think go for around $65. So right off the bat, once I know that this is cracked, I know that that is $65 that I won't be able to sell. That's not that big of a deal. There should be a lot of other parts in here that I can sell. But the thing is that if this was an LED taillight off a new car and it was worth $300 or $400, then you might be pretty upset about that crack. You know, if you bought the car for cheap money and a taillight was going to get a lot of that initial investment back, then that is something that you would really be worried about. But for this car, it's not that big of a deal. This taillight's still good. So the other thing that I found is that this headlight, when I was looking at it, if you can see in there, the lower tab is broken. They got a zip tie holding it on. So this headlight is broken. I've sold plenty of headlights with broken tabs on it. So this one might still sell and it'll just be a lower price. The same thing about the taillight. This headlight is not that expensive. But if you bought a car that had a $1,000 headlight in it and then you notice after you bought it, it was broken and you can only sell it for $400, then that could really change how you feel about buying that parts car. So you want to make sure that when you're buying these cars that you look them over to make sure that all this sort of stuff isn't already broken. Because if you're buying a car that has a lot of broken parts on it, then you need to subtract that from your list that you're going to be able to sell. I am planning on selling these headlights, so this does make a difference. But these headlights are maybe $100. They're just a halogen headlight. They're nothing special. So it's not gonna take away a huge profit from this car. It is something to pay attention to. You wanna make sure what's broken and what's not. So I'm gonna go ahead and jump start this car now. I'm gonna get inside and make sure everything works, the climate control, the radio, speakers, windows, sunroof, all that stuff. You wanna make sure you check everything. That way, if somebody has an issue later, you can say, hey, it was working when I took it out. Here's a picture of it working, or here's a video of it working. You know, a lot of times you just want to accept the return anyways, but you want to make sure that you're not selling bad parts. So I'm going to go ahead, get in there. This thing smells like mice pee a real lot inside. So I'm going to keep the windows down and try to air it out. It's going to make my garage smell like mice pee, but that'll be okay. It'll air out better that way. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that. As you can see, the dash lights up, which is good. You wanna make sure that all of that stuff works. All right, so all the windows are going up and down. So that's good. We know all the motors work. So this is a good example right here. This should lock back down and then you should be able to push it and it'll open, but it does not work anymore. There's also some damage on here anyway, so maybe I wouldn't sell it to begin with. Because this doesn't lock down, you're not going to want to sell it that it works 100%. So if this was part of my list that I had, I'm just going to leave it the way it is. We got the AC on. Let's see if all of this works. That's going to be at the head, and we'll put it on everywhere. We'll take that one off. All right, so I just went through the car with it running. All the windows work, the door mirrors work, the radio, all the speakers work, the CD player works. Pretty much everything still works. The power seats work, the AC even still works. So pretty much this thing is good to go. As far as things inside electronically that doesn't work, everything still does. At this point, it's only about taking it apart now. So everything does work in here. All electronics work. The other big thing to do is when you're taking a car apart, you want to take the driver's door apart last. Once you unplug this door panel, none of the other door panels are going to work, so none of the windows are going to work. When I take a car apart, I always start with the rear doors and windows, take those apart, and then the passenger window, do that one next, and always leave the driver's one for last. It's also way easier to take the windows and everything out of the doors while they're still on and they can be powered up. You know, there are some dirty things about it, like that airbag and the steering wheel. The steering wheel buttons are gross. That cup holder lid does not work, so I won't be selling that. The armrest, that actually does go for some good money. That whole console is already broken. You know, the seats are torn, but the power seats still work. The power seat controls are one thing that's on my list. So I don't care about the seat. I'm just gonna take the controls. You know, there's not much else back here. I mean, all the speakers work. You know, all the seats fold up and everything that they're supposed to. But I'm not gonna try to sell these seats unless somebody locally wants to come and buy them. So as you can see, I just checked it out. Now this is what I do every time I get a car. I like to check everything out. Next video I'll probably do on this car is after I get all the parts off, I will show you all the parts that I have, talk about maybe the prices of each one. I'm gonna get those listed, what I think each part is going to be worth. Obviously, once I start selling parts, I'm gonna keep track of everything, just like I did for the Mercedes. I'm gonna tell you each item I sold, how much it was. I'm gonna tell you when I break even on this. I only paid $500, so hopefully it's soon. I'm gonna tell you guys all that, what I'm making for profit, what each part is worth, and all that stuff. So I hope you guys stay tuned. And once this car is out, I'm going to be finding another parts car and I'm gonna keep this rolling. I'm gonna have those parts listed on eBay and then I'm gonna start searching for the next car. I'm hoping that I can do one after another. It's gonna be winter here soon in Massachusetts and winters can be bad. I'm not in a heated garage. So hopefully I can still get some parts cars during winter, but I'd like to keep getting them in as fast as I can. My goal would really be to do one parts car a month. I think that's pushing it of where my life is right now. But if I could do one parts car a month, that would be 12 a year. I think I'd be doing pretty good if I could do that. It's probably gonna start off less, but I'm gonna try to find the best cars to part out as soon as I can each time I get rid of one. So hopefully you guys wanna stay tuned. If you do, please subscribe. I'm gonna keep putting these videos together. So please stay tuned. Thanks for watching and I'll see you next time.